Where did life come from? How was the first living organism on this planet created? Who created that first living organism? How did it come into existence? This is a question that has intrigued scientists and human beings for thousands of years. Several theories have been proposed to explain this. One of the hypotheses that we saw was panspermia, that life came from outer space. However, there is another hypothesis which suggests that life evolved or originated on Earth itself due to the environmental and natural conditions present on early Earth. This was demonstrated by the Stanley Miller experiment. The Stanley Miller experiment was a famous scientific experiment conducted in 1953 by a young scientist named Stanley Miller, working with his professor Harold Urey. They wanted to find out how life on Earth could have started billions of years ago, long before any plants, animals, or humans existed. What was the big question here? Scientists believe that life must have begun with very simple chemicals, but they did not know exactly how those chemicals turn into building blocks of life like proteins and DNA. So Miller and Urey asked, could life's building blocks form naturally from the conditions of early Earth? Let us understand the experiment setup. To test this hypothesis, Miller built a special glass device to recreate what the Earth's atmosphere might have been like billions of years ago. Here is what they did. They first created the gases. They used simple gases that they thought were present on early Earth, like methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and water vapor, which represented the oceans. Then they simulated the ocean. They filled part of their device with water, which was heated to create steam, simulating the evaporation from the oceans. They also created spark. In the experiment, they added electrical sparks which acted like lightning. Lightning was common in early Earth's stormy atmosphere, and the sparks provided the energy needed to start chemical reactions. After this, the magic started happening. The gases and water vapor flowed through the device. And after a week of this stormy atmosphere with lightning sparks, Miller found something amazing when he checked the water in the device. What did Miller find? Miller discovered that several amino acids had formed. Amino acids are the small building blocks that make up proteins, which are essential for life. This was a big deal because proteins do most of the work inside cells and are necessary for all the living things. Basically, when they simulated the early conditions present on Earth, they actually found building blocks of life. The experiment showed that simple chemicals with the right conditions like lightning and early Earth gases could naturally form molecules that are essential for life. Why is this experiment important? This experiment gave scientists a clue about how life might have started on Earth. It showed that complex organic molecules, which are the foundation of living organisms, could form naturally from the simpler materials available on the early planet. Though we still don't know exactly how life began, the Miller-Urey experiment was a big step towards understanding that process, giving scientists hope that life could emerge from non-living materials under the right conditions. But the Stanley Miller experiment did not create life, or it did not create any consciousness. What it did was create amino acids, which are the essential building blocks of life, but it was far from actual living organisms or anything with consciousness. It did not create life. The experiment produced organic molecules like amino acids, but it did not create any cells, DNA, or living organisms. Life is incredibly complex, involving cells, proteins, DNA, RNA, and many intricate processes. The experiment was just the first step in understanding how the basic ingredients of life might form naturally. It did not create any consciousness as well. Consciousness is a much more advanced phenomenon that involves brain activity, self awareness, and the ability to think, feel, and perceive the world. Even living single celled organisms like bacteria do not have any consciousness. The Miller experiment did not come anywhere close to creating something like that. It was more about showing the first chemical ingredients for life and how they could form. So, while an experiment, was an important step in understanding the origins of life, it was just one piece of the puzzle. The leap from simple chemicals to a living conscious organisms is still a huge mystery that scientists are trying to solve. Thank you so much for listening.